But it doesn't take much imagination at all for people to have this experience of simping, for young men to be trained in this not voyeuristic role, but this consumer's role, this pay-to-play model, this paying for attention, this paying for the right to send and receive messages, this paying for escalating levels of dissimulated intimacy. It's not just that it takes very little imagination to see how that's going to shape their sex lives, their ways of relating to gender roles, dating, marriage. It's almost impossible to see how it could fail to impact their lives in those ways for years and years to come.
Calling Katerino his girlfriend is actually just completely just random. He's not a person on stream. He's not a person on YouTube. It looks like this guy.
Nobody said it was easy. Oh, it's such a shame for us to part. Nobody said it was easy. Oh, it's so hard being Katerino's ex. I'm never gonna have sex.
I can get them excited, Kate.
Get them excited. You're making me feel excited.
Give me 500 bits and I'll do the rest.
Only 500 bits? You're cheap as fuck. You're really, really cheap. You know that?
I'll do it for free.
Okay. Wow.
In part because millions of people around the world are cooped up in the middle of an epidemic at the moment, there's been a broadening and deepening discourse about one website in particular and about the increasing encroachment of pornography into the daily lives of all of us in the decadent West. That website is Onlyfans. Onlyfans doesn't do anything new, but it brings together elements that are already familiar from Patreon, Instagram, and outright pornography, and puts them together in one package that seems to be now remarkably culturally appealing, and in some cases takes up gray areas in between pornography, fan service, and outright prostitution, sex work of various kinds. And OnlyFans has emerged and taken on this role in a period when new laws in the United States of America actually shut down many websites that formerly notoriously handled sex work. Craigslist no longer has a personal section, no longer has men seeking women or women seeking men. And if you can remember the old days, just I think about 2 years ago, there used to be a long list of all the possible gender combinations. Men seeking women, but also like couples seeking men, couples seeking women. There'd be this long list of acronyms for people to click on. Well, all that's gone. That's all a thing of the past. And the new prominence of OnlyFans has partly emerged to fill that void. So there are a lot of conversations going on in kitchens and dining rooms and living rooms, including our own, about the extent to which this maybe impacts the psychology, ethics, and culture of a new generation of young women who grow up with at least this option of selling images of themselves, and they could just be images of themselves in a bikini or images of themselves in their underwear, of course all the way over to not just hardcore pornography, but prostitution, sex work of various kinds. A lot of reflection focused on the women. What I want to draw attention to in this video is that there's a need really philosophically to examine also the impacts on the men. Now, I think that some of the most important problems and questions in our society first emerge as comedy. Like, I think if you look at the history of gay rights, a lot of it first emerged as a joke. Like, there really was a time when the idea of two men getting married was a laughing matter. There was a time when having a transsexual person run for office, be elected as mayor, was a laughing matter. There was a time when it was considered a great radical breakthrough that the TV show Soap had an openly gay lead character that was a comedy. But, within just a few decades, those issues that were addressed with so much discomfort and awkward laughter, whether by stand-up comedians or TV and movies, those became, serious political platform issues that fundamentally transformed daily life for people around the world. The jokes that are being made now about simping, I think in the same way, there's something really important and really powerful here for us to examine. Keep this in perspective. I'm over 40 years old. And when I was a kid, there was hysteria about the psychological, ethical impacts of young men encountering nudity and sexual images just in the format of a printed book. Now, if you think about the relationship I could have, or anyone could have, to an inert image on a printed page, there's no way that can ever be as evocative, there's no way that can ever be as emotionally impactful as sending a voice message to someone who's the object of your desire, and then having them record and send a voice message back, right? That's what Onlyfans offers. Of course, Snapchat and numerous other websites offered that before, and people were before setting up Patreon and having people pay to join their Patreon and then give them a special Snapchat and then have this kind of communication. I admit, it's not new, but maybe the examination of it, the cultural recognition of how important it is, kind of is new, where people sit back and say, whoa, this is something very different from what existed before with just an image on the page. People have the illusion of a personal relationship with, of personal interaction with these celebrities or stars or women presented in sex objects and so on. They have the illusion, and for a high enough price, sometimes, maybe, it's not just an illusion, it's a reality.
Whereas they are simply playing it up for the audience. We are completely benign and here because we enjoy it and we think it's fun.
We also went to Disney together off stream.
Don't
Didn't
see
stream
you
it at
doing
all.
that, Wilbur.
We didn't
Don't
stream
see
any
you
of it,
doing
which,
that.
if we did stream it, it would have been fucking huge. But we cared more
Yep.
about spending time together than streaming it.
Because we are friends, Smile. Yeah. Yeah, Wilbur. Yeah. Wow. Imagine being you guys.
The more competitive you are, the hotter you get.
Plus you guys win cause Carson's gay.
I'm gay too, dude. We're a perfect match. Carson and I are both gay.
It's true.
I'm only half, okay? It's different.
Like if you pay enough money, you get to talk to them for hours at a time on Skype. If you pay enough money, you get to meet them for a dinner date. If you pay enough money, in some cases, keeping it all the way real, you can have sex with them, right? And you really have to recognize the possibility of this can have a powerful, powerful impact on the imagination of young men who are the consumers for this. The possibility can shape the way they perceive and feel the world, probably more than the reality. As much as we may joke about it, therefore, I really see in this kind of punchline about simping a sincere and important form of moral concern. A guy like Carson, aka CallMeCarson, okay, did he even know to what extent he was playing a game? Did he recognize to what extent he was paying someone to be his fake make-believe girlfriend? And did he even have a clearer concept of where fantasy stops and reality starts? Like, it's funny because these debates, they were had in a very insincere and phony way back when we were talking about, like, Playboy magazine, printed on paper. By the way, Playboy magazine, which included, like, discussions of politics and literature and interviews with business leaders like Lee Iacocca. Playboy magazine actually had a very unexpected effect for many teenagers who got a hold of it. Like, whoa, there's a whole realm of kind of intellectual content stuffed into this if you just bought it for the nudity. There's a whole concept, really, of what it is to be a sophisticated middle-aged man presented to you in the pages of Playboy magazine, which you're now not getting also. That being said, we kind of rehearsed this discourse at a time when technologically, and in terms of the relationship that pornography offered between the desiring consumer and the object of the desire, it was quite insincere. To be clear, I would not say that it is impossible for a person to have a definite notion of their own gender role or sexuality on the basis of something they saw printed on a piece of paper, whether that's an image or a story or a political ideology that they read on a piece of paper. Pieces of paper influence us, and partly because we choose those pieces of paper, and then we pick them up and read them, and we choose what we do with those ideas or notions they impart to us, okay? But there's a lot of work involved there, all right? It's much more than just a small leap of inference to go from looking at a naked picture on a piece of paper or reading a story or maybe reading the autobiography of someone you look up to, which includes them discussing their sex lives, relations between the sexes. You can take that information and mold it into your own ideology for how you're going to live and how you're going to treat women and so on and so forth, right? But it doesn't take much imagination at all for people to have this experience of simping, for young men to be trained in this not voyeuristic role, but this consumer's role, this pay-to-play model, this paying for attention, this paying for the right to send and receive messages, this paying for escalating levels of dissimulated intimacy. It's not just that it takes very little imagination to see how that's going to shape their sex lives, their ways of relating to gender roles, dating, marriage. It's almost impossible to see how it could fail to impact their lives in those ways for years and years to come. The first time I really had to think about these issues in my own life was much, much later than it would have been if I hadn't been doing humanitarian work in exotic, far-off Cambodia and Laos. During those years of my life, email was important to me. Email was an important part of my life, but not the internet, not Instagram, not YouTube. Those things existed, but I had no contact with them. When I returned to the decadent West, there was one very, very good-looking young woman I started talking to. And I have high standards. In case you don't follow this channel, I do have high standards. And I started talking to her not because she was good-looking at all. She was vegan, I was vegan. And she made one very coded statement on social media indicating that she had relapsed. She had started using methamphetamine again. And she was afraid she was going to ruin her education, drop out of university. That, this was going to derail her studies. And I knew about her that she had a past some years earlier of using meth, but had quit for a number of years. She'd been clean for a number of years. So I started writing to her right away, and I guess we talked via Skype. If it wasn't Skype, it was some other, voice platform like that. Maybe it was even old-fashioned telephone, now that I think about it. But, I got on the phone with her. And again, if you know this channel, you probably know I'm very good at giving a highly motivating morality lecture to people. Maybe I'm even better at doing it one-on-one. But I was really saying to her, look, every month that you're in university counts. Every week, even during the holidays, even during reading week, if you screw this up, if you get back on these drugs, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. You can fill in the blank. And she knew I had a wife, now divorced. I had a kid, now in a legal custody battle, and I don't get to see her as often as I'd like to. But at that time, I was with my wife and my child, and I never presented myself as being in any way interested in her romantically, nor did I present myself as being available. And, it meant a lot to her. No surprise. She did appreciate it. She got back in touch with me a couple weeks later, as I recall, and it seemed to me that she was expecting me to move forward with seducing her or trying to get in bed with her. And she started talking to me in a manner that was completely banal and didn't reveal that she was trying to flirt with me or was expecting me to flirt with her in any way. And then she quickly got very frustrated with me, started swearing at me, and I'll always remember she said to me, "Don't you be fucking coy with me." It's very straight, because I don't hear the word coy a lot. Definitely not from people under age 50. That conversation ended with her blocking me and never speaking to me again. And I talked about it with my wife, and I said to her, "Look, when I was a kid, there were good-looking girls who got a job working at a bar as a bartender, and they got kind of corrupted by having people flatter them all the time, having people flirt with them all the time. And you know, if you're a good-looking girl, even working at Starbucks, it can be like that. I was a good-looking guy working at Starbucks, didn't corrupt me, but yeah, a lot of women flirted with me, and a lot of women, you know, it was a weird part of the job. So definitely, as a young person, any kind of service industry will. But I said to Mo at the time, I said, "Look, I think what we're seeing here is the way the internet raises that up many, many levels, and it brings it into people's lives much more intimately and much more powerfully. And a platform like OnlyFans, it's paying people to flirt in an extensive and deep way with their fans. They're being paid to send text messages back and forth. They're being paid to make the time to talk on Skype. And it's protracted over time. And of course, there may or may not be nude photos involved or fully clothed photos involved, whatever. But obviously, the nature of that interaction and flirting, it's both deeper than working as a bartender or working at Starbucks, and it's broader in the sense that it gives the woman, as the object of desire, it gives her the impression that it's a much broader part of humanity that acts this way, right? Like if you work at Starbucks, it's only one guy out of 100 that tries to flirt with you or tries to hit on you. And if you open a profile on OnlyFans or many of these websites, it seems like it's 100 out of 100 men that are trying to sleep with you. And so much so that this woman, she didn't reveal to me anything about her background that way. I don't know. I mean, it could have just been that on MySpace, she was used to having a MySpace page, and she was a really good-looking woman. And on MySpace or Facebook or Instagram, and she was getting this kind of thing. She was so used to 100 out of 100 guys trying to seduce her that after she had this somewhat intense personal experience with me, she was furious with me because I was not trying to seduce her. So yeah, that in my own autobiography was this weird kind of wake-up call. And since then, not a whole lot of times, but 2, 3, 4 times, I have seen that again and again, where you meet young women who have just become accustomed to men always playing that role. And now increasingly, of course, they're going to get accustomed to men paying to play that role. But this isn't just changing the behavior of the women. We're also training a new generation of men, I think, with even more terrible consequences that are, frankly, even harder to understand.